All right, let's jump right into this explainer and literally peel back the curtain on modern banking. We're going to explore some totally fascinating and honestly pretty eye-opening source material that maps out the exact relationship you have with your bank. And here's the kicker. It's based entirely on one single thing, your balance. So we're going to move step by step from the absolute bottom all the way up to the top 0.1% just to see exactly how your balance dictates your humanity within the financial system.
We absolutely have to start here, at a place so many of us have been. You look at the number on your screen and there's a minus sign in front of it. You overdrafted by just $4. Maybe it was a coffee you just forgot was scheduled to charge. But you know what? The bank doesn't care that it was just $4. The bank only cares about the math, and the math mercilessly punishes you for going under. The penalty for being broke is quite simply that you are made more broke. It's this feeling that isn't even anger anymore. It's just this deep, heavy exhaustion.
Because this is exactly how the math of poverty compounds. Watch this. What starts as a tiny $4 mistake triggers a $35 bank fee. Then, out of nowhere, a forgotten $7 subscription hits, and bam, that triggers another $35 fee. Suddenly your rent payment fails, tacking on a $75 late fee, and your phone bill bounces for another $25. So what happened? You are now over $200 in debt from a cup of coffee. You call the bank to explain, but you're just stuck listening to the whole music loop 3 times, only to have a voice read you a rigid script denying any refund.
At this level, hunger isn't just physical, It's silent. It's skipping lunch on a Wednesday and dodging coworker dinners, just pretending you already ate. And when you finally walk into the actual branch, the teller looks at her screen and her face just changes. It's not pity, it's just cold. She no longer sees a real person standing in front of her. As the source material so powerfully puts it, you watch yourself stop being a person on her screen and start being a flag, a category, literally just a risk score with shoes. You're not a customer anymore, you are a problem.
Moving on to level 2, the $200 baseline.
So when you finally scrape together the funds to get back into the positive, maybe you work 20 hours of overtime just to keep a $200 balance for 1 week, the bank finally notices you're there. And what do? They quietly drain $12 to $15 in maintenance fees right out of your account, simply because you don't meet their $1,500 minimum. Think about that. You're literally paying the bank to hold money you barely have. At this tier, if you want a credit card, you're offered this insulting secured card, where you have to put up $300 of your own cash as collateral just so they can charge you 24% interest to use it. And if you deny that terrible offer, it means you have zero safety net. So when your tire blows on a Tuesday, you're riding the bus 3 hours late to work. And when you visit the bank, the teller processes your transaction in 40 completely silent seconds. The smile is reserved for the next person in line. You're essentially treated like luggage moving on a belt.
Let's step it up to levels 3 and 4, the profitable middle.
This is where a massive shift happens. You hit a balance of $2,000, your direct deposit becomes consistent, and suddenly, you are visible to the algorithm. The entire way the bank looks at you completely transforms. Those quiet maintenance fees we just talked about, they automatically disappear. You didn't even have to ask, the system just waived them. Suddenly, real credit card offers, the ones with metallic ink and 22% interest, start arriving in the mail. You apply for a $5,000 car loan and get approved in 48 hours at 11%. The commercials are finally working for you. Now the bank doesn't necessarily respect you yet, for sure, but they realize something incredibly important. You are now profitable.
And as your balance grows to $15,000, the perks really start to accelerate. You log in one day and your credit limit has magically jumped to $9,500 without you even asking. You go to buy a car and your loan rate drops from 11% down to 6.8%. Why? Because the price of money gets cheaper when you stop being a risk. The bank even begins subtly courting you, sending you personalized emails with your name actually spelled right.
Now, here's where it gets crazy. Because the crucial point is the stark contrast in how totally mundane tasks are handled. It is the exact same institution, but at $200, you are subjected to a 40-minute hold, a labyrinth of phone trees, and a scripted denial for a fee. At $15,000, you're assigned a relationship banker with a direct line who reverses a $32 fee in 3 hours with a simple email saying taken care of. The fees that used to drain you are now completely optional. The source material delivers this absolute gut punch of a revelation here. The bank was never intentionally mean to you when you were broke. They were simply indifferent. But indifference at scale looks exactly like cruelty. At this stage, however, you finally transitioned. You are no longer someone the bank is just passively invested in, you are someone they are actively invested for.
Which brings us to levels 5 and 6, becoming an asset.
Now we cross a major threshold where the air gets a little bit more refined. The bank doesn't just want your business anymore, they actively defend your money from their competitors. At $80,000, you're officially labeled a preferred client. You walk into a branch and you're guided right past the velvet rope line, literally the exact same line you used to wait in. Your relationship banker, let's call him David, sends you personalized birthday emails. He even asks about your sister in Chicago because you mentioned her in passing 9 months ago. He's specifically trained to remember these details to keep your account. And if a competitor bank calls you up with a better savings rate, David counters their offer within an hour. You are now worth defending.
Hit $500,000, and the dynamic flips completely. The bank stops being a place you visit, it becomes a service that comes directly to your office. A wealth management colleague drives to you bringing printed reports in a leather folder. You sit down for 90 minutes to discuss tax structures, timelines, and complex estate plans. And at the end of all that, they don't even try to sell you anything directly.
This highlights a vital psychological shift in how the bank operates. A product is just a one-off thing they want you to buy, but a consultation? That is something they want you to need over a lifetime. At this level, a frozen wire transfer is fixed on the second ring. No hold music, ever. You're invited to private bank dinners with guest speakers overlooking the city. And at those dinners, money isn't the conversation. Money is the table you're eating on. You are now a heavily protected asset.
Entering the upper echelons now. Levels 7 and 8. Bending the rules.
As we climb higher, we enter a realm very few ever see, where the standard rules of banking, the ones everyone else is forced to follow, simply no longer apply. At $5 million, you don't just have a banker, you have a private banker. This is a person who manages fewer than 20 accounts total. Yours is one of them. They know your kids' names, and they're actively researching the charitable foundation you casually mentioned over coffee last March. For you, paperwork that takes normal customers 2 weeks is rushed through in 48 hours. Investment minimums? They're simply waved away with a nod.
And this perfectly captures the difference between standard wealth management and true private banking. Wealth management is a service, and services follow rules. Private banking is a relationship, and relationships negotiate those rules. You are invited into conference rooms with no logos on the doors, sitting at one-piece solid wood tables, discussing private investments that will literally never appear on a public prospectus. The rules are entirely bent just for you.
Which brings us to the absolute peak of the banking ecosystem, $25 million. At this tier, your relationship with the bank is literally a named line item in someone else's performance review. Losing it would damage actual careers. In fact, 3 distinct people inside the bank exist on payroll partially because of your account alone. The institution actually organizes itself around making sure you never leave. Deals are completely bespoke, drafted exactly to your timeline. You no longer apply for investments. Exclusive investments apply for you. The chief investment officer is suddenly calling to ask your opinion on emerging markets, and the head of private banking flies out just to get your advice on future products. You've completely transitioned from being a customer into being a partner who is actually shaping the bank's future. Finally, we reach the conclusion, the circular truth.
Let's snap back to reality for a second to look at the circular truth of this entire system. Right now, at this exact moment, someone else is staring at a minus sign on their screen from a forgotten coffee charge. They are eating a $35 fee that they cannot afford, and they are listening to that exact same scripted hold music loop we talked about at the very beginning, and they are exhausted.
And this is the most critical takeaway from all of this. The system isn't broken. Actually, scratch that. It is working flawlessly, exactly as it was designed to. The exact same institution that is currently flying an executive across the country to ask a $25 million partner for advice on emerging markets is at this very second charging a broke person $35 simply for not having enough money.
Because at the end of the day, as the source material beautifully states, you are the exact same person at every single balance. Your character didn't change between -$4 and $25 million. The bank just arbitrarily decides who you are and what your humanity is worth, based entirely on the numbers sitting next to your name in their database.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. Does the bank actually change at every level, or do they just change how they reflect you? Is our humanity, our worth, and the respect we receive in society truly defined just by our net worth? It's a fascinating look at the systems we interact with every single day. I hope this breakdown helped you grasp exactly how these invisible tiers operate. Keep questioning the systems around you, and as always, keep learning.